probably the best video ever.
This is great.
We got 25 minutes. We got to go.
Hey, happy
Wednesday,
everyone.
Hump day. I'm bringing it back. I know Janelle abandoned our camel, but we're bringing it back.
Excited to have you all with us. If this is the first time that you're with us here on Say That Channel, we just wanted to say welcome. We're super excited to have you with us here. At Say That Channel, we are unapologetic about talking about the ugly come up of business and entrepreneurship. And so, you know, we all have heard those stories about people who have had nothing and then have massive success, right? Well, what's happening in between, right? What's happening during that ugly come up? That is what we're here for. We're here to talk about all of those things. What are the pitfalls you need to circumvent? What's the mindset you need to have? And I think today is a great example of talking about the mindset that we need to have.
Absolutely. So, guys, the way we go about it is we dive into a topic. And some of the new exciting ways that we've been looking at that is we've actually been adding other voices into the conversation. So today, let's jump into today's topic and get after it. Today's topic is...
Are we addicted to debt? Some of you who are in the retail space, you're probably like, yes, and I'm thankful for it.
Facts. Like, you're keeping my job going.
That's right. The business is open because of America's addiction to debt.
That's a good point. What a good point. Wow.
You know, and I would say that, yes, we are. And I'm really interested to talk about like the business side of that. Like, what are we doing, putting ourselves in debt for our business versus like household things? What is it like to live in your means, but you still have vision, right? Like you still have vision for where this is going. So like, how do you have the vision? And then you have this credit card right here. So like, you know, we could use it to build out the business or to pay for that bill for the business. Or when do you know, like, okay, I really just can't do that right now. I just have to hold back and maybe make a plan for 6 months from now, a year from now, I can do that thing, or I can invest in that other tool that I know will take my business farther. But I think it's really important for us to think about this. I definitely think Americans are addicted to debt. And I think a lot of it has to do with wanting to show off for the Joneses or what have you, wanting to look like you're doing just fine when maybe we're not really. And I think that is in business as well. I think there's a mindset in business where sometimes you want to make it seem like you're really successful, or whatever success looks like to
you. Beyond where you really are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you might find yourself gathering debt unnecessarily. Now, there are some people out there, I recognize there's a whole camp that believes that there is a good debt for businesses to take on. There's a ton of wealthy people who take loans all the time because they do not spend their money to make investments. And so that would be considered a good reason to have debt. So anyway, my overall answer to this question is yes, America is addicted to debt. And I think there's a difference between consumerism debt versus business debt. And I do recognize that there are some reasons to have debt. And I think it's important for us to distinguish between that. Like when it's a good investment to not use our own money versus I'm doing this to try and make it look like my business is more successful than it really is.
That really is, yeah. Or not even your business, just your own personal life.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time with this because I want to be, I feel like, it'd be easy to just say yes, or not easy, excuse me, but there I could easily see to the points you made why I would lean towards yes. I mean, we live in a nation that's $32 trillion in debt itself. We live in a very capitalist, obviously, society here. And so to your point, you do find yourself spending money. Something that you said that really had me going, though, is I wonder if the people who are so wealthy would be wealthy if we were all living within our means and we didn't have so much excess debt, which is what they're using to make. That's the profits that their companies are earning, like if we all really did live within our means. But to that point, the other side I think I want to look at and stay on to say no is I personally have gone through like a bankruptcy, and after being educated around how to have good debt, bad debt. And even though you can be in a period of having yourself in a bad debt kind of situation, even with the knowledge of knowing what to do and just maneuvering yourself, I think a lot more people are being educated around finances than there used to be. So maybe their situation may look like they're obviously in debt, but it doesn't mean you don't have the education to get yourself out of it. And it's just a question of when we're looking at all of this. I mean, if we look at where the country's coming from, guys, we came through one of the most, I mean, financially challenging times in, I know, certainly our lifetimes. And Janelle and I have been through not just now a pandemic, but the markets crashed twice, like, one worse, a housing bubble. So we've been through some fairly challenging time. And during those times, you're going to find yourself accruing debt as you try to maintain your lifestyle. Janelle, you made a great point. I know in some instances we can question what is excessive. I have like my phone is what, $600-700. Obviously, I could have maybe got an older version. So there are things like that within your own personal life that you kind of have to make decisions on. I really use my phone for other things, so it's important. Like, we edit the videos, we do things for the show. You know what I mean? So it matters, the technology that to your point, and again, the equipment that you're using to invest in the things that you're doing in your lifestyle and so on. But I actually want to side and say, no, I think more people are being educated. I mean, think of the guys that we know now at EYL and other platforms that are teaching people and putting it out there on social media. So I think there's some more knowledge now than certainly when I got into bankruptcy. There were so many things that I was unaware of that I can scroll up on Instagram now and see somebody talking about for free, honestly. So I think more people are educated. We may just be looking at it because of how their actual finances are right now. It may look bad, but I think if we look back in 5 years, once the country really bounced back, new, political parties switch over, maybe leaning more towards the more financially friendly kind of policies, you may see a lot of changes in the near future. So I'm going to actually say, no, I don't think we're addicted to it. I think it just may look bad right now. We're recovering addicts. How about that? We're recovering addicts. I'll leave with that.
I love that. All right. Well, let's take it over to our big thinkers over at UIL. So Earn Your Leisure. The fellas there always have some really interesting things to share with us about different topics. And today is no different.
Say that.
Let me know when you're ready.
Go for it.
Let's get into this. Consumer debt passes 17 trillion for the first time. So Americans have racked up over $17 trillion in debt. That is up 2.9 trillion from 2019. And the main catalyst of this is auto loans, credit card debt, student loans, and mortgages. The average American has $59,000 in debt. 41,000 of that is in mortgage. 5,400 is in auto loans. 5,600 is in student loans, and 3,400 is in credit card debt. And 46% of credit card holders maintain debt from month to month on their credit cards. They're not paying off their balances in full every single month. So, all right, $17 trillion
Jesus
for Americans in debt. Yes. Where do we
they
start?
don't want to say we're in a recession, and the VIX is still at. Let me go check right now. I think the VIX is at 17. Volatility index continues to get lower. This reminds me in the scene in The Big Short, when they're going to the credit rating agencies and saying, "Hey, these loans are defaulting. Why have you not changed the grade of the loans?" And they're like, "Well, we get paid to not change them." It's really interesting to see debt be this high. And I know we give them flack when it's due, but the axiom that Dave Ramsey uses, debt is dumb, is true. I always said it. If you have a ton of debt, I don't know one person that has 300,000 in debt. And if we were to give them 300,000 to wipe it away, they wouldn't take it. Live below your means, have to build a business, have to invest. I know it is tough to stay disciplined, But as a country, I think we've gotten, and I'm going to be very clear, it's the companies and marketing that pushes us to be in debt to buy things that we don't need to make companies stable that are actually unstable without us consistently buying them. It is getting scary, though. We'll talk about it later, like our country's debt to GDP ratio as well. But I feel like they are trying to collapse the credit worthiness of the consumer and put us in more debt so that the regulations later would be easier to pass.
Yeah,
even with the crypto market, like we'll talk about it later, but I feel like they are not every avenue that people had to make money last year or in 2020, they're slowly closing those lanes off. But we have to get this under control immediately.
Yeah. I mean, when I looked at it, not surprised. But I always think back to like let's go back to 2 to 3 years. Like these are the effects of a pandemic, right? If we look at unemployment, if we look at wages, when people don't have money, they're going to go to credit, right? And again, and you said this weekend, you had a great monologue about America being built on debt, but that's what's happened. That's what's happened. And even inside the pandemic, when we were looking at interest rates, and it was like, great, this is a great time. We can refinance your home. It's at a low rate. People were taking out home equity lines of credit. And when you take out home equity lines of credit at a low interest rate, that's great for you for the immediate. But you're adding to the length of your loan.
Yes.
And you're adding to the debt that is going to be accumulated, because it doesn't matter if you bought a home for $400,000, right? By the time the 30-year mortgage is paid, you've paid well over $1 million for that home.
Yeah, easily.
Right? And so I looked at the number. They said 14 million homes were 14 million mortgages were refinanced during the pandemic period, starting in March 2020. 14 million homes. So you got to think about that, right? Like at one point, banks stopped giving out HELOCs. I remember going to a bank that I frequent, and they were like, "Yeah, we're not offering it anymore," just because of the amount of debt that had been accumulating. But like you said, student loan, right? That's been on pause.
Yeah.
Right. And that the debt is still increased because people are still going to school and they're accumulating debt, let alone the people who are in repayment and haven't had to pay for 2.5 years. So this number could actually be higher, right? If this wasn't a freeze until I think next September. And then when we talk about interest rates again, as we're going through the pandemic, we talked about the semiconductor problem that affected cars. And so now there's less cars being made with the same products. So now when there's less cars, there's going to be a premium on the cars that they have in inventory. And so now you're going to be paying oversticker. And if you're financing and you don't have great credit, then you're going to be paying a higher interest rate. And then that loan gets increased. And so all these factors are happening at the same exact time.
On purpose. Can we be very honest? How did they get 72 million chips available for Dodge Chargers in 1 quarter? I know these are numbers just like a gross extrapolation, but they were driving up the value of houses, 30,000, 40,000 over asking. Some people were paying $20,000 above asking price for a car. They crashed the market, and all of a sudden, AMD and NVIDIA had enough chips to power your Tesla. The number one way to increase price is to limit the supply that is available. I feel like that was done on demand. So for those of you in the comments that may be watching the clip, hey, what's the play? The play, which I hate the term, but it's to invest in companies that monetizes debt. Visa is one of them. Historically, one of the best companies in the credit card space. The return has been absolutely amazing. If you can get it around maybe 209, great. And if you think America is going to have less debt and consumers are going to have less debt, then you can short Visa. That would not be wise. But if you want to go long Visa, you'll see some considerable gains there, because I want to get some actionable items for those who may be joining. If this is your first time maybe watching the program, see Rashad, I'm learning. 5-year return on Visa, 76%. 6-month return is 10% while we are in a recession that they will not call.
How you feel about Amex?
I like Amex too. I think Visa is just a leader, but if I had to pair them, it's like Twin Towers. That is a great credit spread that you can play. As a result, if I pull up the stats real quick, all-time return for Visa is 5,826%. They have been down over the last year, down 5%, but I like Amex if you hold for the long term.
If you live in Westchester County or upstate New York, you need to hear about this new inflation relief program.
For sure.
So that's one way to benefit from it. So, yeah, can we do a monologue?
You want Milo?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, come on. Let me get you ready.
It's been a while.
Well, let me. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna start with space you in. Get you ready. Yeah, that's my guy. Yeah, get the camera angle right.
I gotta get you right, man.
Very, very important.
Okay, hold on. Before he gets into his monologue, I just want to relate some of the figures that he mentioned. So I was like feverishly taking notes. So between 2019 to 2023, Americans went from $2.9 trillion in debt to $17 trillion in debt. That's a huge jump. And this debt is held in student loans, mortgages, cars, and credit card debt. And then they broke it down even more. And they said the average American has $59,000 in debt. 4,900 of that is in mortgages, 5,400 is in auto, 56 student loan. P.S. I just want to point out that student loans is higher than auto, but that's another thing. 3,400 in credit card debt, and 46% of Americans maintain some sort of debt on their credit card monthly. 14 million homes were refinanced during COVID.
Yeah, low interest rates. They were throwing them out there.
And right. And so that's how you had that happen. And then people don't have, so when people don't have money, they rely
that's exactly, that's exactly the point I was saying. It's like there's a behavioral habit that we had during the pandemic that just came about from one, we were home more. I mean, I feel like you and I talked about this with Michael Finkley, like some of the things that happened during that time. I mean, I know you and I have touched on this stuff when it comes to the Black Friday episodes we've had where there's a huge spike in online shopping. Can you imagine what that was like during the pandemic where people had to get things? So you got into this habit of just spending money, digitally, having to physically go out anymore. It just became one of those things. And to the point I think we both made about us keeping up with the Joneses, I think that's actually become, like I said, just having a regular iPhone feels like a normal necessity. But there are huge options financially that we could really be making when it comes to purchasing a cell phone. You know what I mean? If you're being realistic, if you had to buy a phone. And one of the things that always fascinates me, and guys, drop in the comments if you know this to be true. You could swear you have no money, but if your cell phone broke, you are getting that bad boy fixed. You're figuring it out. You're calling some. I'm telling you. We used to talk about with trainings, like if somebody had to get to the trainings, like you'd figure out how to come up with the money tonight. I mean, you get what I mean. It's like $500. If you had to get $500, could you figure it out? What was it? If I gave you the keys to a Porsche outside, would you get the money right now? And people would, yeah. But for most people, what they mean by that is I'd put it on a credit card. I'd put that bad boy right on a credit card, and you could charge the $500, and they don't even think about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's not. You don't associate it with having to pay. It's like, oh, I'll pay that off in a couple months, but then it's 2 months later, you're putting another $500, and all of a sudden now you have $900, and you're like, oh wait, what? You know what I mean?
So. All right, let's get back into it. Let's hear the monologue. Ready?
Let's do it.
Let's make sure.
There we go.
Okay, that's good. All right. So speaking about this debt situation, it brings up a bigger issue that nobody really wants to talk about, where Americans are addicted to debt. And so, yes, Americans are addicted to debt. We live in a society that has forced us to be layaway consumers. We're in a layaway economy. Nobody even realizes it. Remember back in days, you used to go to like TJ Maxx in these stores and you put $30 down on something that costs $100. You make a couple of payments, and then 3 months you actually be able to get the sweater. Yeah. The only difference now is that you can actually get the sweater without having to actually pay for it until you actually are done. So when you think about things like a car, a home, even college, credit cards, the common denominator is that we're spending on things that we can't afford. Mm-hmm. And we've been trained to put as little down as possible. Like that's something to be celebrated. When even in the homes, right? A lot of places in the world, the mortgage system is completely different. They don't have the same, like you buy a home in cash or you put down 50%. we're like, okay, how can we put down 1%, 3.5%? Well, what happens is that the only real people that benefit from this system is the banks, because we're trained to put down as little as possible, right? But there's nothing, you don't get nothing for nothing in this world. So by putting down as little as possible, that means that you pay interest. And who collects the interest? The bank. So by the time you actually get finished paying for your home, you could have bought 3 properties for that same amount. So it's like, and this happens at every income level, even people that are millionaires. Somebody that has $1 million, instead of buying a home for $500,000 in cash, they put 10% down on a $10 million home that they can't afford. And this happens in college. Instead of going to a community college, which is virtually free, you want to go to an out-of-state school and major in something that you're not going to make any money in, and go into $150,000 of student loan debt. And then when you come out of college, then you can't even work to pay your loan back. This is the same for credit card debt, because you're spending your credit cards on vacations to go to Miami and Balenciaga bags, because we are trained to not think about it now, we'll think about it later. And when the hangover comes, we just delay it even more and just push the can down the road even more. So auto loans, same thing. Instead of buying a car that you can actually afford, well, how can I get the Mercedes? Can't afford it, but $500 a month, not that bad. Just go for it. Just do it. YOLO. So yeah, we can give you solutions on how to, cut debt and how to invest in companies. That's important. But why don't you try buying things that you can actually afford? That would probably be even more beneficial, right? So this is something that I know a lot of people don't really want to address this issue, because this makes us look in the mirror. But we're constantly putting ourselves in debt for things that we can't afford to impress people that we don't know. And eventually you're going to have to pay it back.
Yeah.
And it's a sobering reality, but the party always ends at some point. At some point in time. So I just think it's important just to, put that in perspective. And like I said, this is a notion that Americans have come to normalize. But a lot of places in the world, they don't understand it. They're like, you want to live somewhere, your home costs $100,000, you save money until you have $100,000.
Big facts.
And then you buy a home. Or you move in with 5 relatives and each put down $25,000. And now you each have a room. That's an option. You know what I mean? So it's like we've just become so desensitized to borrowing money and stretching things out as long as possible. 20-year mortgages, 30-year, they talking about 50-year mortgages. Like, just be careful. Be careful. Be mindful.
And going to your point, if we look at countries, so everyone listening, you don't have to follow anything that we say, right? Look at the countries that have a inverted yield curve, which predicts recession. I want to name some of them: Chile, Iceland, Czech Republic, Canada, Sweden, United States, New Zealand, Qatar, Israel, Germany, Norway, Hong Kong, Switzerland, South Korea, and the United Kingdom. These are the biggest nations, and all signs are pointing to debt accumulation leading to destruction of GDP. For those who don't know what that means, all those countries are like underwater and broke right now.
It's a threat to national security also.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the weaker you are as a country, the more debt you have as a country. Now that is a ripple effect across pretty much every area of the economy. So individuals have too much debt. The government has too much debt. We're borrowing money from companies. The companies are under the pressure of foreign entities. The government's borrowing money from China. It's all coming back.
Don't fearmonger, Rashad. We're just talking about China.
It's just the reality. So it's like
China.
The chicken. Joey Crack.
Oh my God.
Shout out to Joey Crack.
My graduates from my school being Forbes, bag drop.
All right, closing thoughts.
We were talking about this, right? Like, It is I mean, just like Joyce Ocean is saying, keeping up with the Joneses, that we have gotten to a place where we live beyond our means, and it is
Yeah.
a part of the
Normal.
culture.
Normal.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's normal. It's normal.
part of like everyday culture to do just that. And he's right about putting the mirror up to your face, like all those things. It's just where we are right now. And I think we do need to change that. And that only like, it's like, oh, but it's just like the little person, but it's not though. Cause like he said, it's like major businesses, then, they're
Yeah,
taking
no.
out loans to like and then now you got the country taking out loans from other countries. So
Well, different levels, different devils. To the point he made even about a person who's a millionaire living in a home that they could easily pay off, a perfectly fine home, but then exceeding their needs and buying something for 10 million and only being able to afford, you know what I mean? And one bad month, couple bad months, it's all uphill, or it's all downhill, excuse me. So yeah.
true. The college thing is a thing.
I definitely think a lot of it is set. I have to be careful. Well, I think obviously we can be born into something, and a point they made, which is other countries don't work this way.
Right.
There are other places where we wouldn't have been given a lot of we were taught this behavior. You know what I mean? I remember one of the biggest places credit cards do signups is on college campuses. College campuses is one of the biggest places. I mean, you can look up the numbers, guys. And the reason they're doing that is they know we're inexperienced and we're out on our own in most instances for the first time without our parents. And so we have many households that's not explained. You're not taught these things. And so through those years of college, you accumulate debt. And you're there in college, like he said, accumulating debt. You've gone out of state. You're paying, money where you could have gone to a perfectly great community college. The way things look. I know people who were, went to law school and were working in Starbucks.
Yeah.
Nothing against obviously that company. But you get the point. That person went through law school with the expectation of coming on and earning a 6-figure income, and they're having to, the market was saturated, so they had to go find, a job to start paying back their debt, their student loan. All right, we got one more comment here.
I love this. The USA has normalized addiction, but only judges drug addicts. I agree.
Say that.
Yeah, say that.
This is such a great point. Somebody made the point that if somebody was at a dining table and started smoking, that so many people would be offended, right? But in other addictive areas, whether it's eating poorly, making poor food choices, maybe eating to excess, excessive drinking, things that we've maybe socially now considered negative, really negative, you'd be quick to say something in those instances, but nobody really says anything if you were doing that, overeating, all those other things. But if somebody was to smoke, you'd be like, oh, that's disgusting, get out of here, right? But you wouldn't say that if somebody was doing some of these other things. So that's a great point.
So I'll just say this as like the leaving note for me: invest in Visa and Amex.
Facts.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's right. You invest in the things that you put your own money in. That's right. I'm about to do that right after this ends.
Oh man, that's a really great point. All right, guys, so let's leave it there for today. But definitely make sure you go and check out some other episodes. If this is your first time to the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. If you got value from this conversation, definitely make sure you pass this along to others. But until next time, guys, remember, as always, you deserve the good life. Say that. We'll see you guys next week.